Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Planet Film Network. I am one of your hosts, Sean Monk.
I'm your other host, TJ Cornwell, and today or tonight, we're going to be giving you our review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Okay, so Antman and the Wasp: Quantumania for me, I thought it was a blast. I know a lot of people online. There's a lot of mixed feelings, mixed consensus, or I guess lack of consensus online about this movie. Basically, everything ranging from genuine criticisms of the movie that I can see, and I can not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily agree with them, but I can see where they're coming from. To just flat out, there's going to be those people out there just MCU, MCU bashing in general who've been doing it forever,
Yeah.
or this movie in particular feels a lot like just man, everything post Endgame is just blah. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I just did not see that with this movie. I know a lot of people. I know I'm kind of giving counterpoints to my point rather than my point, but um, I know a lot of people saying like how chaotic they felt this movie was and how just all over the place they thought it was. I thought it was easily the least chaotic three-act movie structure of the MCU in a while. I think that I've said before that Black Panther Wakanda Forever for me was, a good movie, but I think I liked this movie more than I liked that movie. And then in terms of Love and Thunder, not even comparable. And then I would say Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness for me would be on more even footing, but I still think I like this one a little bit more. I have seen it twice now. So that's kind of where I'm at with where it falls for me in the Phase 4, Phase 5 post Endgame argument. Um, but yeah, I guess we'll dive into some of our deeper thoughts in a little bit here. But TJ, just overall, what did you think of this movie in general, and how does it kind of stack up to some of the stuff we've been seeing lately from Marvel for you?
Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Uh, I thought at the end of it, I thought to me it was kind of a middle of the pack MCU movie. I didn't think it was bad. Like I said in my TikTok review, I don't
Mm-hmm.
think it's as bad as people are saying. Like I feel like people have it like bottom three, like Marvel. That's not. I don't think that's true at all. But I also
Yeah.
wouldn't put it in top tier. Like I wouldn't put it with the Winter Soldiers and the Infinity Wars.
Mm.
But I also again wouldn't put it with the Black Widows or the Dark Worlds. I think
Yeah.
just kind of in that little spot where it's like like, oh, okay, that was fine. I didn't laugh all that much, to be honest. Some of the humor got me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Specifically just kind of that Baskin Robbins stuff I thought was really funny for some
Yeah.
reason. It really worked for me in that way.
Yeah.
I probably could
Beautiful
have watched a whole
callback to the
movie
first
about
one.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
For me, Kang's the standout. Obviously, you go to this movie to see Jonathan Majors in this role.
Mm-hmm.
He's very. The word that came to me when I was watching it was he's very stoic. And that might be like just a weird word to use, but
No, yeah, I
I
get
just
that.
feel like he has so much like you want to listen to him speak, and when he talks, you're very engaged in what he's saying, and he and obviously Jonathan Majors is a really good actor, and I thought he nailed hit this out of the park. But everybody else was in it, really good. Evangeline Lilly, she was kind of sidetracked, it seemed,
Yeah.
which was very very odd.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, one thing I did say, or one thing that I was thinking, I know everybody was like, well, why is it called Ant-Man and the Wasp if the
Oh, here we
Wasp
go.
isn't
Are
even
we gonna have
like.
the same thing?
I was
I feel
gonna
like a lot
say,
of people.
well, wasn't Michelle Pfeiffer at one point the Wasp?
There you
So
go.
then
That's what
technically,
I
it
literally
is
wrote
Ant-Man and the
that.
Wasp.
I will say that consensus has come out on Twitter, or
Right.
just in the movie sphere. But these are the partial of the notes that I took when I was watching it. That was terribly in frame. But I literally wrote Ant Man and the Wasp, and I wrote Ant Man parentheses Scott Wasp parentheses Janet 3, and then
Yeah.
that's what I titled my notes. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just to hop on that quick sidetrack, which I'm sure we can talk about later, but I definitely want to circle back to that of the fact that really, if you look at this movie, it is Ant Man and the Wasp. It's really Scott, Janet, and Kang's movie, which is
Hmm.
great. I don't see how that is a. I see the like I said. Sorry, I won't. But just we'll table that for later. The whole Janet versus Hope presence in the story. I think we could talk about
Mm.
a little bit.
Yeah, I thought everybody was, good in it. I didn't. I'm with a lot of people where I didn't really see how Catherine Newton added to the character of Cassie in any way. You probably could have just left the previous actress in the role.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was a fine movie. I liked the post credit scenes. And this isn't a spoiler, obviously, because he was in the trailer. But for me, MODOK just didn't work.
Really?
Until the very end. Until the end.
Okay, yeah.
Like those
That's
last
fair.
few quips back and forth, that worked for me.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else didn't work for me. But yeah, overall, I thought it was middle of the pack movie, and I'm excited to see what Kang is like, what more they're gonna give us, because
Yeah, like
he's
how
very
deep
compelling.
is this well gonna kind of go?
Yeah.
Which I think is a great segue for us into the spoiler section here. But before we go, for those who haven't seen Antman yet, which could be some of you out there, what are you thinking 4 out of 5?
I gave it 3 out of 5.
3 out of 5. I think I actually can't remember what I gave it on Letterboxd. I think it was a 4, and I think I'm gonna stick with that. I think after 2 viewings, 4 out of 5 for me seems pretty
4, yep.
solid. And that's to me, that's on my personal like MCU scale, right? So I also gave something like the I don't know, I don't know if this is, but just throwing a random thing out there, like something like The Irishman or like The Departed or something, that like a movie I really really love. I could also give like something super prestige like that a 4. Just for me, usually when I'm going on Letterboxd to rate things, I subdivide genre or franchise or something. So it's like a solid MCU 4 out of 5 for me. I really enjoyed it. A lot, almost actually everything with MODOK like worked perfectly for me. But again, we will talk about it because I do see valid criticism with that, of course. But guys, that will do it for our non-spoiler section of this.
Warning.
So, do you want to start with MODOK, or where do you want to go with this? We'll go in whatever direction you want to. Just how some I do actually also want to talk about the trailers for this movie. But we can talk. That's just one of the things I want to bring up. So I'll throw it to you. Whatever you want to start with.
Yeah, let's start with MODOK, because I'm interested to hear your take. Coming from somebody that really liked what they did with the character.
Yeah. So obviously I have read comics. I think it's common knowledge on the channel. More, you are not as versed in comics as I am. Not saying that I am a comics expert at all.
Unless we're talking Invincible, which I just finished, but
that is true. You finished all 3?
Yep.
I felt your pain the other day because on Christian Harloff's channel, which you can go check out his channel, he was talking about it because he used to work for the company. He was like, my friend was like, or I finally watched the show and I was loving it, and I was like, I should pick up those books, and I look over on the shelf behind me, I had all 3 of them. And I'm like, he had all. You were looking all that time, and he had just had all 3 of them. Didn't even know they were there.
Yeah.
Anyways, MODOK is a comics area that I am just not as well versed in. I have not watched the new Rockstar's breakdown of MODOK, but obviously I've played the Avengers game, as have you. I have base knowledge of MODOK in other things, the Patton Oswalt Hulu series, obviously. So I'm familiar with MODOK in a lot of different forms. I just have not read the comics in particular on MODOK. So take that with a grain of salt, if you will. But I really, really loved what Peyton Reed and Corey Stoll did in this. Again, I know there's criticism out there that says that's just the overall look didn't work. The humor with him didn't work. The actual, buying into what what MODOK is didn't work for some people. And I totally see that. I totally see that and can get where people are coming from. But for me, like I said, I think Corey Stoll really knocked it out of the park, especially with some of his line delivery. Like when Cassie has that moment, which I'm sure we'll talk about, that a lot of people have been back and forth about, the whole "don't be a dick" thing. And I just love Corey Stoll, just the way that he delivers the but I don't know what I'm gonna be. What should I be? He's just this almost childlike asshole. Which again, does it really fully match up with the Darren Cross that we met in the first Ant-Man? Not
Right.
really, but you know, a lot's happened. The guy got turned into a giant head with little tiny arms and legs. Like, you know, a lot can happen to a person's psyche to change them. But yeah, it's really just one of those simple things of, I'm sure you'll have more to say about it not working for you than it working for me, just because in almost every scene I think it worked. I loved the whole you know, initial speech to all these different people of like, the destiny you've been running from all your life is finally here, and then they're Darren. Like, like I loved the whole, like, it goes into the full like montage flashback trope, and then it just breaks you out of that. And they do that like I think twice, at least twice, maybe 3 times in the movie. It works for me every single time. Like, especially then again, you get kind of the equal moment where like he's kind of looking to have his like Joker moment, and then he tries to have it again with Hank when he's like, oh, I bet you never thought you'd see me again. And then Hank just pulls the same thing. But how did you kind of feel about MODOK, his role in the movie, and kind of the overall look and tone, and just being in this movie in general, I guess?
Yeah, I thought the idea of what they did with him was good. I thought what they were trying to do and what worked for, you know, a lot of people was a good idea. Just kind of making him like kind of a comic relief villain, which I guess, again, I'm not versed in him at all in the comics except for, you know, the Avengers game, and that's about it. I always thought he looked kind of like goofy. I always thought it was kind of an odd character, but and something that I remembered, definitely a character I remember just from his appearance. But just like the it just didn't really land for me. None of those comedic beats, like I said, except for the end, not including the dick. I thought that was the worst part of it. That just
Really?
that whole exchange
It
just felt very clunky to me. And like I looked at Danielle, I was like, somebody wrote that on a piece of paper and said, "Yep, there we go." And I don't know, it didn't work for me.
See, for me, that line, like what you just said, I've seen so many people say what you just said. That to me is one of the things of this movie that I just feel like I just watched something completely different. Impact on it. But yeah, the first time I watched the movie, I was sitting there and I was like, I was genuinely like, just fully bought into that moment. Like, just with like, I had no like, oh my god, like somebody really wrote that, like, type of thing. I just really liked it. I don't know. I don't know, but continue. I know. Well, let's talk about the moment that you've been talking about, the Avengers moment at the end, kind of.
Yeah. So the only time that whole comedic beat and everything worked for me was at the end when, you know, he's talking to everybody and they're all like, even the, you know, the people that haven't seen him yet are like, oh my god, Dad, what happened to you? And he's like, I'm gonna die an Avenger, and everybody's like, yep, yeah,
sure,
you
buddy.
are, you did that,
Yeah.
That worked for me just from everybody's like kind of like, what do we say to this guy? And you know, he's like last dying breath, and he's like half choking on his like
he's like
vomit or whatever.
Up,
and everybody's like, yeah, you did it,
yeah. I love Scott's line.
That did work for me.
He just goes, a lot's happened today.
Yeah.
Like, and I love too that like Hope, I guess maybe we could transition from MODOK into Hope here.
Yeah.
That was the first time she'd seen him the entire movie, was when he was dying.
Right.
And just goes, Hope, you changed your hair. And she's like, oh, thank you.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god. But yeah,
what did you think of Hope in this movie? What were you shocked when you were like, when you know the movie was going and you're like, oh, she's really, you know, she's kind of sidelined in this one?
I'm not shocked I wasn't shocked in terms of just the overall kind of sentiment around the movie, and, you know, kind of her presence in the trailers and everything. I wasn't really expecting this huge, basically the only way that I could expect it is if there was like a huge WASP plot of the movie that just was completely absent from the marketing for a particular reason. Like, so that I was kind of waiting for. I was like, okay, is there like a secret up their sleeve with like some big thing that Hope has that they're just not putting in any of the trailers? I would say about less than halfway through the movie, I was like, okay, no. that's not what's happening. Like
Mhm.
basically her only big moments are in the trailer. Um, and I guess we can, lightly touch on too the whole thing with the trailer. I just think they gave away so much with the different shots of Hank and Janet walking
Mhm.
together when they are separated at a certain point of the movie. A lot of like it's that Empire Strikes Back thing, right? This is the kind of Empire Strikes Back movie of where you split up the main team,
Mhm.
where you get the kind of the Pims all together or the Van Dynes all together, and then you get Scott and Cassie, and then kind of everybody that they end up teaming up with together, but separate. Uh,
The movie is
and
very Star Wars, FYI.
100%, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the overall thing too. Of another reason I just liked it was I just liked that it was just this, sci-fi, almost more just straight up sci-fi than sci-fi fantasy, because it really is truly science fiction. Like just so much. Like I saw this one tweet, um, and I know I spend a lot of time on Twitter. Unfortunately, I know like every other sentence I have is I saw this one tweet. But that's some of the great parts of Twitter is that you can see all these different tweets that spark these ideas of conversation and discussion about movies. Saying they were like, as soon as I saw the buildings that were alive, I knew
Mhm.
exactly what this movie was going to be, and that's exactly how I felt. As soon as they said drink, did the whole drink the ooze, my mind
Yeah.
immediately the first two movies that my brain went to, and I'm almost 100% sure you've seen one of them. I'm not sure about the other one. Is Galaxy Quest and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Both
I
of my
haven't seen either.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I thought we had talked about a long time ago on the show Galaxy Quest, um, but specifically, if you've watched either of those, you know what I'm talking about with the translation kind of mechanism in this being like the ooze or like the drink that they get at the bar. And then even in the MCU, we've seen something like that before, where the Guardians say that they are implanted with universal translators. But this was just a lot more of a sci-fi twist on it. It really, really made me think of the kind of earworms in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where it's a literal
Mhm.
worm that goes into your ear and translates everything. As soon as I saw that, and then of course there's a big, there's this whole thing of all these aliens are chanting this thing and they don't know what the hell they're talking about in Galaxy Quest, and then they get it translated and it switches over the audio just like it did in this movie. And so as soon as that happened, my brain was like, okay, this is just going to be a fun sci-fi Hitchhiker's Guide, Star Wars, pulpy adventure thing with Kang in there being a, dangerous, devious threat to everybody. But to circle it back to Hope, um, I really just she was just kind of there. I mean, that was the weakest part of the movie to me was probably Hope in general, um, because I don't know. It did it seem like to you? Did it seem like she wanted to be there? Like she just
Uh,
didn't feel in character in every scene to me, like the way that she has in the past, three movies that we've seen her in.
right. Yeah, I mean, honestly, to me, just thinking back at the movie, and I'll be interested to see because I do want to watch it again. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go to a theater to watch it. I'll probably wait for Disney Plus. But
Mm-hmm.
um, just thinking right now, it's like I don't really remember her much, like just in the movie at all, except for that last, scene where she comes back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but other than that, I'm just kind of like I think most of her role in this movie was pretty forgettable. Um,
Yeah, it's a
it
lot
was
of
either
like,
just her doing her
Mom,
like
you have to
blaster
tell us,
thing,
Mom.
or like or her just like arguing with Michelle Pfeiffer and just
Yeah,
like being like, oh, why didn't you tell us this,
yeah.
or stuff like that. And that's all I can really remember.
That's pretty much all it
um
is.
yeah, which does suck because it's called Ant-Man and the Wasp, so you'd expect the Wasp to
Yeah.
be in it. And I think we both have this idea that oh, the Wasp is actually Michelle Pfeiffer's character,
Mm-hmm.
who was the Wasp at one point. Um,
She wears the
but
suit
I
in
think
this movie.
so far for that character in the MCU, they haven't really like gained a good footing. For
Yes,
me,
I agree.
like in the last movie, I don't like that movie either. And then I think she's just kind of showed up in various like, you know, she was in Endgame for the big battle, I think,
Mm-hmm.
and then I don't know if she's in anything else.
No, just the other two Ant-Man movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um.
But like I compare her to like Rhodey, right? I feel
Yeah.
like that would be maybe the closest comparison.
Right.
Um, unless I'm like, well, then also even like something like Loki, but I feel like that's almost a special circumstance with
Hmm.
that dynamic. But so like think Rhodey, right? So had a bit
Right.
of a stumbling block with a recast, but now, I mean, Don Cheadle, I'm excited for him to be a co-lead of Secret Invasion, and to have his own movie coming out as Rhodey.
Hmm.
And granted, he's been in like 10 movies, way more than the Wasp has. But even I'll set Rhodey all the way back to like Civil War. Like after Civil War, I think Rhodey could have led his own movie. Maybe even after Age of Ultron, I think that Rhodey could have led his own movie. But really after Civil War,
Hmm.
Hope, I just feel like even if she were to, and I know last time we were live, which was 2 weeks ago at this point, we did that giant uh, Kang Dynasty Avengers kind of bracket thing, and I really just can't even see her being on the Avengers team. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I just don't see, like you said, they haven't really gained a footing with the character, and in terms of her as a superhero, uh, I just kind of like you said, okay, she can fly and shrink, and she has hand blasters. That like,
Hmm.
that's pretty much it. You know what I mean? And granted, you could say, well, Ant Man only has this and that. Yeah, but it's the writing and the characterization and everything that makes Scott Lang such an integral person that now we couldn't picture an Avengers movie without Scott Lang. You know, as long as he would be alive. Um, I think it just comes down to that. It just feels like either she didn't want to be there or she had a reduced role for whatever reason. Although I know she's been coming out, she's been very public lately about reflecting on the stuff that she said, and about how, you know, Marvel and Kevin Feige's thing is kind of like, that is the kind of James Gunn approach that we've seen recently with Zachary Levi. That's your business. As long as you aren't hurting anybody, you know, we are not in the business
Hmm.
of, you know, getting rid of people for their political views, yada,
Right.
yada, yada. Whether you want to think that went into it at all or not, I do think that it's a fairly jarring, probably for me, the, like I said, the most jarring, my least favorite aspect of the movie is not Hope herself, because I still enjoy when she's on screen, but I'm just like, for me, at the beginning montage, right, where she's working at Pim Van Dyne Industries and she's Zuckerberging it up, and you know,
Yeah.
I almost would have been like, okay, and then that's what she's doing, and she's just not
Right.
going on this adventure. You know what I mean? I feel like you could almost literally take her out, and I feel like, God, you're gonna talk me down to a 3. No, but I feel like you can feel the studio notes of like, well, what's Hope's big moment gonna be? What's
Hmm.
her big thing? What if she jumps out and saves Scott at the end? Let's do it. But it's not earned because she doesn't have the same stakes. If it had been, ironically, if it had been Janet that jumps out, you know, with, you know, it doesn't really make sense because she's not wearing her Wasp outfit, whatever. But,
Right. Yeah.
you know, if she jumped out, even with the guns that Michael Keaton had picked up from his, you know, people, and it was Janet that did that, and then maybe even
Michael
sacrifices
Douglas.
herself. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Either one of those two, which we could talk about Michael Douglas next if you want, because I feel like, unlike Hope, he had a
Yeah.
minor but very important role, especially when it came time to the end battle. But I thought that he was fantastic in this too. Um, but yeah, it just nothing felt important with Hope, and then also nothing felt earned with Hope, like throughout the entire movie. It's just very very weird.
Mhm.
Um,
Instead of
yeah,
going to Michael Douglas, I'd rather kind of. Oh, if you're watching this review and you've seen the movie already, Michael Douglas obviously it just does not have that big of a role in this movie.
yeah,
His main kind of thing comes at the end with all the ants, which is kind of cool.
yeah. It
I feel
finally
like it's just
reminded
kind
you
of
that
a
this guy was Ant-Man. I
right.
feel like
And I'm
that
not
gets
gonna lie,
lost.
the entire movie I was like, because it's been a long time since I've seen like an Ant-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
Or actually, it probably hasn't been, but you know, I'm not remembering. But I was like, did this character always have an earpiece or
Yeah,
a hearing aid? And
yeah.
I was like, oh, I wonder. And for a split second, I was like, I wonder if Michael Douglas like he's just having trouble hearing, and he's wearing a hearing aid. But obviously, he needs it to talk to the ants.
Yeah.
I did think that was kind of an easy way to say like, oh well, they came through, and then they all just like they passed through this thing where they built all this stuff like
it
really
was
fast.
A very
then...
like what's the Deus Ex Machina. It's like the very opening scene. Well, once the montage and voiceover is over, like the opening scene with them at the house. He's like, oh, these ants, they're super intelligent ants. They're more intelligent than anything we ever had. They built it all themselves. And then you see, like, as they all get sucked in, there is a 3-second shot of those ants getting sucked in so that we know it. And then we see them again when Scott's tumbling through. And then we see them again shrink themselves down. And then we don't see them ever again until the very end. And Hank's just like, I've been getting, and they do like a flashback to like 4 minutes ago when he goes, what is that? Like, yeah, I remember when that happened earlier in the movie. It was like a half hour ago. Thanks for the flashback though. But that being said, it was a little ham-fisted, but I did genuinely like that moment because it does remind you this guy is also Ant-Man. It's two generations of this hero, duo. And I think that was done really successful, way more successful. Like you said, super small part for Michael Douglas. Really, this is Scott and Janet's movie, but what he did get to do, I think he at least had that moment, unlike Hope, that was like, this is what he brings to a fight. This is what he can do that, Scott could do if he really wanted to try, as we saw in the first movie, but the whole controlling ants isn't really Scott's thing, it's more Hank's thing. But yeah, what do you want to talk about next?
I want to talk about Scott and Cassie's relationship and their characters in this movie, and then we can go to Kang. I thought, Paul Rudd obviously great in this movie. I thought he's, funny as ever. At some points, not every point again didn't hit for me. I thought the two montages were the funniest parts for me. Personally,
like at the beginning and the end,
and then the Baskin Robbins thing when he's trying to shrink down to get the orb. I thought that was really funny too.
A lot less humor, like overall though, like by design. Like it's a lot more serious of a movie than like Love and Thunder or even Multiverse of Madness. To be honest, Multiverse of Madness is a little more like dangerous, but takes itself less seriously than I think this movie did.
And then Catherine Newton, I thought was, she was fine. I thought she did what she was supposed to, and that was kind of about it. Again, I don't really have a connection to Cassie Lang and either of the actresses that have played her. So it didn't really bother me that she was in this movie. But I don't think that she added anything more to the character. I don't know about how you feel, but yeah. But I did like that she kind of it tells you who she is. She's grown up. She's kind of, she's trying to make the world a better place. She's at these kind of protests. She's getting arrested for being at the protests. I thought and this is something that I heard somebody bring up, which I thought was interesting. Everybody's probably brought up before, but the fact that we kind of just established that she's like this really super smart girl that we never really got any. There was nothing that made us think that earlier on.
I actually hadn't really thought about that until you just said that. Like,
but she's like, oh, I built this thing to like transmit to the quantum realm that like sends a signal back, and like it's like, okay.
It's just kind of. I feel like it's just kind of like assumed, and I'm not saying this is a positive thing. I think it's just one of those. Like there's a lot of like in the MCU, like Bruce Banner, Tony Stark, and really those two are super geniuses. Peter Parker and Scott Lang are also geniuses when the writers need them to be. You know what I mean? Like those, I always felt like, because then in Civil War you get the whole like he builds his own suits, like Spider-Man I'm talking about. Like he builds his own suits. He builds, he is figuring out the web fluid on his own, all this stuff. But then they kind of move away from Peter Parker being a genius. I feel like the same thing with Scott. I just yesterday watched the first Ant-Man again. For the first time. I hadn't seen it in like a year. And in the first one, they really push. They're like, he has genius level intellect. It's just what he's using it for, type of thing. So I feel like they just kind of was like, yeah, Cassie's smart just like her dad is, remember? Because her dad's like he's super smart.
Right.
And it's like, right? Like,
yeah.
And I feel like that did not play as well as I think they thought it would. But in terms of the relationship, like with Cassie, I feel really bad for what happened with Emma Furman. I mean, I think that's terrible the way that they, that she found out when the rest of everybody found out. I don't think we're ever really going to know the story behind that. But, I mean, at the same time, it's like you said, Emma Furman was in like 5 minutes of Endgame. Like the I have way more emotional attachment to the little girl who played Cassie, who I saw a great like idea or theory, I think, on TikTok, that was like, what if at the start of this movie they announced that it's Catherine Newton or whatever. You kind of can't work with Endgame, but either way, the thing goes basically to give Scott and Cassie, which I don't know if you want to transition this over to Kang or whatever, but when they're in the prison cells, and there's that scene, there's first that actually like kind of tense scene where MODOK comes up and he's like, tells Cassie, we only could do this because I got your signal. I figured out what it was, you guys, etc. But then Kang shows up and he just kind of like, tenses them up. He kind of like throws Scott against the wall and then just kind of holds Cassie in the air. I saw somebody say, and maybe he doesn't have all of his time abilities and everything because his chair is still broken, but somebody was like, wouldn't that have been the great opportunity for him to age up Cassie and be like, there you go, you're losing even more time until you say yes.
Yeah.
Like, that would be awesome.
That would be interesting.
If they had done that, like, it maybe could have even been a way to, I don't know how you do this without making it funny, but like making her go back maybe into the younger version, who that girl is now. She's like 14, 15, so she's not really that young. And then like putting her back and having that be the threat, rather than Kang, who's this, time warrior, just kind of use Jean Grey telekinesis to be like, stay. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't find that super imposing, but
okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Let's talk about Kang, because I found him incredibly imposing as a villain. Jonathan Majors has this fantastic quote. I mean, you could listen to quotes of him talking about his approach to all the different Kangs for hours, but he has this one where he said, I wanted this one in particular. I wanted to speak like I was a man who knew 100 languages fluently. Like, every word that I was saying was the most weighted, thought out, in that exactly what you said, stoic, comes across entirely. In that sense, I found him, what's big word, foreboding, like concerning. I was scared, everything like that. But in terms of him and the writing of him, I think where this movie does start to fall down for me, which again, I still really, really love this movie, but where it does start to fall down for me is like, you have the next Thanos, and he's just kind of like pinning a guy up against a wall and being like, you better help me. And then like later on, he's like, Cassie takes over his video call, his little video feed, and he's not just like immediately finding her and killing her. He's just like, what's going on? What? It's a lot of the like Darth Vader in A New Hope of the what? Like that's what it kind of reminded me of. But that being said, I think that all comes down to the fact that this is an introductory Kang that we're getting. This is probably not the Kang Dynasty Kang, or if it is, a lot more is going to happen to him between now and then. It's an Ant-Man movie. Ant-Man's got to win at the end. Or at the very least, the villain has to lose at the end. It's just how these movies go. So for that reason, I can kind of put it aside and enjoy it for what it is. But that's kind of where I felt on Kang. I thought Jonathan Majors, absolutely incredible, crushes the performance and everything. I just felt putting him as a stereotypical Marvel solo movie villain kind of hurt it in my mind just by default, just by the fact that he was a one movie villain. But that's what I got on Kang for right now. Where are you at?
Yeah, for that whole kind of scene when, you know, he's trying to get Scott to help him and this whole thing, and I think what the most menacing thing is probably again supposed to be is when he tells him like, "Oh, I'll kill your daughter, and then I'll just make you watch it over and over again until you beg me to kill you, and then I'll kill you."
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's supposed to be that kind of Thanos level menace that, you know, I think you thought maybe was kind of lacking with the whole like, "Oh, I'm gonna force you up against the wall and just like kind of, you know, move my fingers a little bit, and you're just gonna cry out in pain." And that still worked for me. Again, I was just thinking like, you know, I have my mind in my mind like, "Oh, Star Wars Force, okay, what?"
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, I thought again, Jonathan Majors, I thought he knocked us out of the park. And even like the ending scene with him and Scott fighting, you know, just fist fight basically.
Oh,
I know
that
some
was
people,
incredible.
I know,
Yeah.
and I know some people probably have like kind of had a problem with how it's like it kind of just comes down to this like fist fight, and
Yeah.
meanwhile, you know, it's like, Ant-Man, you're overmatched. Like, and I think, you know, he
Yeah.
says that at one point. I really I thought Scott would be a goner in that moment. I really thought that it's possible that Kang just might beat him to death. Like, and I thought that was really cool. It's cool to see. And you know what's funny is when I was watching it too, when when Scott just like gets really big and he starts just like walking over everything,
Yeah.
I was kind of like, why didn't he just, you know, he should have just done this like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Like, why are we waiting till now? I was like, clearly nobody's gonna mess with him. He's like, you know, 100 feet tall.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought again, Jonathan Majors knocked it out of the park. I'm excited to see what we get with Kang in the future. Obviously, we got a little taste of that in the 2 post-credit scenes, which I thought were awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen to. Honestly, I thought Scott and why can I never remember her name? Hope. Yeah, I thought they might be stuck there, but
Yeah.
they kind of they did that with Scott already, so it's kind of like,
Yeah. Let's kind of dive into that before I think we'll close out with the post credit scenes. And the end of the, I do want to definitely touch on the whole end of the movie too, so don't want to lose that in there. But again, I think they really kind of gave away a lot in this movie of, you know, especially the fact of so much of the marketing. Again, I'm going on this trailer thing again, but so much of the marketing, you see all the scenes with Scott's like bloodied up face and like beaten up face, and I'm, you know, was looking at the time or just, you know, sensing the time, and I'm like, okay, we have 15 minutes left in this movie. So clearly something is going to happen here. You know, there's another fight coming, the fist to fist fight after all the ants, you know, after everything with MODOK, after Hank comes in, and then as I'm watching the movie, after half of them are already back into San Francisco, and then at the very end, a tiny moment that I did like was just, we didn't have to see Kang stumble back up. It was just as they were going through the portal, Scott kicks Cassie through it, and you just know, you're like, he's doing that because obviously Kang must be coming up like right now. But then also, again, I really loved the movie, but one of the things that was kind of iffy for me was I did kind of feel like everybody kind of got away a little too easy, a little too clean. That nobody did get stuck. Janet didn't come. I think that it would be a great character, you know, capper, character end of journey to come back, you know, take out Kang. I've seen a ton of great theories on how this movie could have ended to be, in other people's opinion, better, but, you know, just different ways that this movie could have ended. One of the ones that I really liked was that, you know, Hank and Janet go back in, like Janet goes back in, takes out Kang to make up for what she did, but then she gets stuck. And somebody said, what if it's like Hank and Janet now just live in the quantum realm, like as its protectors? I was like, that would have been a fantastic ending. But going into my favorite scene of the movie, and this scene that I just could not stop talking about to everybody that I watched, I'm excited to talk to you about, the ending montage and the ending voiceover to me was the first time in an MCU movie since Infinity War that I was like, oh shit, here we go. Like when he starts going into the, you know, we beat him. We beat him, right?
Right.
I think we beat him.
Yeah.
But then he said that if we didn't let him out, that everyone would die. Is everyone going to die? Like the dread. I felt that dread, like real dread. And that is something I have not felt in an MCU movie in a very, very long time. Closest thing is probably the Loki post-credit scene, with him seeing the Kang statue. That's probably the closest I've come since Infinity War and Endgame to feeling that much like, oh shit, something big is coming in the MCU, and it's gonna be Kang, and you better look out. So for me, everything I just said about feeling like everybody kind of got a little off too easy in this, I feel like they adding in that dread, and then again when Scott's at the restaurant table saying to himself, yeah, and you know, Kang's not coming back, right? Like all those things. I love that because then it shows you, okay, in this movie, they did get off easy, but he's coming back. You know what I mean? Like he is just going to keep coming back and back and back. And the movie for me, I'm not going to lie to you, if that wasn't in there, I think I would be talking completely differently about how I felt about this movie, and specifically its place in the MCU, like how it's going to be building on things. I think I'd be a lot more down on the movie because I would be like, okay, they all got out perfectly safe and now we're just having a birthday party and everything's happy again and it's over.
Yeah.
Like that would have taken me out of it completely. So the fact that they added that in of like, they have this kind of false sense of security. Well, really everybody but Scott, which by the way, Scott seems to kind of be the harbinger of death when it comes to like MCU Avengers movies.
Yeah.
You know, he's the only one that knows about the quantum realm, and now he's the only one that knows about Kang. So I'll be interested to know if he goes to the other Avengers or not. But that really worked for me, and really kind of took that sour taste that was building in my mouth out, because I think it made up for it in the end. And I'm like, okay, this is not as tight of a ribbon as the characters think that it is for themselves. They think they got off scot-free, no pun intended, but clearly they have tapped into something and unleashed something that they have no idea how to put back in. And I think that's perfect segue to the first post-credit scene, which is, of course, we get Immortus, the Scarlet Centurion, and Rama Tut, three of the main Kang variants from the comics, who then lead us into the Council of Kangs, and this just insane, unfathomable scene from a comic book page of the Council of Kangs and everybody showing up. But specifically in that, them saying they're beginning to touch the multiverse, they're beginning to touch time travel. How did you feel about that first post-credit scene? Because again, this is, to me, this was on the level of almost on the level, I would say, of the Thanos at the end of the first Avengers movie, of just
the
like,
final
oh,
do it
shit.
myself.
No, not that one yet. I don't think Kang is
just
there
like look
yet.
back to the camera.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The like hand on the throne and like standing up, like, all right, it's time to get down to business. But what did you think of the this first post-credit scene and the different looks at some of the Kangs?
Yeah. Well, not knowing that there was I knew there was obviously variations. But not knowing that there was like kind of three, main ones. Then I know there's also some other ones that are, loosely, or not loosely, but related to, Reed Richards and that kind of whole thing. And, but it was really cool to see. I thought that whole kind of stadium shot was really cool with all these different Kangs, a bunch of different crazy ones. Yeah. Obviously, I feel like they were probably like, told Jonathan Majors, like, hey, you could do these three, try to keep it maybe in the same, in some sort of vein, but all the other ones just do whatever you want, and there's a bunch of
Yeah.
just crazy people going all around. I thought that was really cool. Yeah, so I'm interested to see like what happens, because obviously they're kind of, you know, they I don't think they expected anybody to beat the Kang that they sent down there to the quantum realm.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now, maybe there's a little bit of doubt in their mind where it's like, oh shit, like if that Kang can be beat, like what's stopping them from, coming after us once we,
Yeah, exactly.
get our plan in motion. But I'm excited to see how I'm just like thinking about maybe where we're going. I am excited to see how they attempt to connect all of this. Because we have,
Yeah.
like, for example, we have the Shang-Chi like radiating, whatever that is in space. We're like, what is that? We don't know how Eternals is gonna go. Eternal,
Mm-hmm.
Gemma Chan is like snatched up at the end of it, and then they just kind of go away. And it's like,
Yeah.
are they gonna show back up and have to do with Kang in some way? Or like Doctor Strange, like going off with
Yeah, going into the incursion with Clea.
yeah. Like, is
Going into
that
the
gonna,
incursions, which they taught
like
Kang dropped the incursions name bomb.
Right.
In this movie.
Yeah. So this post credit scene just got my mind kind of moving in a bunch of different directions. So I'm excited to see what happens. Obviously.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's like I said. I think this movie left me on like I was really digging the movie and I was into the movie and I liked the movie and everything like that. And then, like I said, I started to sour a little bit. And then it was like a boom, boom, boom of like, don't worry about it. We have a plan of where this is going, which is something that I think a lot of people, including myself, have been wary about. But like you said, I think it's really important that, Phase 1 wasn't built in a day. They didn't have 5 movies and then Avengers Endgame. You know what I mean? Like it took a long time to build all the groundwork that they need to build. And like we've talked about to death on the channel, and everybody has Kamala Khan's bracelet, the bangle, the 10 rings, all of the iconography of the Eternals. It's all the same as the quantum realm stuff. I mean, his ship looked like, and he even says in this, he said, "Keep him away from the rings." Like, they look exactly like the 10 rings. His time chair looks exactly like the 10 rings. Clearly we now see this is going somewhere. And then also, obviously, everything with Loki, which we'll talk about in a second. Apparently, the TVA and Kang are going to be heavily involved in Deadpool 3. Clearly, they know where a lot of this is going. Whether it's going to hit for mainstream audiences, seems like they are not hitting their old average anymore with that. But maybe it'll start to come together more and more the more that the plan starts to represent itself or present itself. But last thing I want to touch on here, the very end credit scene of another variant that we meet, Victor Timely. Clearly, this is in the either early 1900s or late 1800s. And yeah, basically we get this scene where this guy is explaining to this group of regular folk that not only is time travel possible with his new technology, but we are not just capable of traveling time, but bending it to our will. And then who is sitting in the audience but a absolutely petrified looking Loki and a still doubting
Mobius.
new version of Mobius.
I love that he was like, that guy doesn't look so bad. What's
Yeah, it's like he seems like a good enough guy. But how did you feel about that one? Clearly, just gearing us up for Loki season 2, which will be coming out probably this summer.
Yeah, that was awesome. We haven't seen Loki in a long time. It feels like forever. When did season 1 come out? 2021.
Yeah.
Whew, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm after that post credit scene. I'm just more hyped for season 2. Kind of makes me want to go back and rewatch that season 1. So maybe I will do that. But yeah, I don't know much about that version of Kang either. So I'm interested to see how he plays into all this. I'm assuming he's probably going to be the main one in season 2. You'd have to imagine.
I would imagine, yeah. And then we also just got that article that dropped this morning that said that he's going to be in, I think, either 3 or 4 episodes. So he's going to be Kang, that is. So he's going to be in Loki a lot more than he was in the first season. 3 times as much, if you will. But yeah, I'm interested to see kind of where it goes from here with, what is his dynamic going to be with Sylvie? What is his dynamic going
Mm.
to be with Loki, with Mobius? Is he going to be somebody that we see running the TVA? It's all very interesting. And then also the quantum realm world, like Kang's kind of empire. When you see it out of windows and stuff, it kind of looks like the TVA. This just giant, sprawling, long, thing. So maybe there's already connections that we don't even know about yet. But guys, let us know, what did you think about Ant-Man? We've talked about a ton of stuff. We talked about all the characters. We talked about the post-credit scenes, the ending, the opening, everything like that. One thing I did want to get your thoughts on though. What did you feel about the lack of some of the Ant-Man regulars? So you got
Oh,
no ex-wife, no Paxton, no ex-con guys, no Luis. Did you feel their absence? Did you feel like it made sense? For me, at least, real quick, I thought it made sense. And then Peyton Reed came out today and was like, listen, we knew very early on we want to get them in the quantum realm as soon as possible. So having a lot of San Francisco stuff just really didn't make sense for the movie, which I think is totally
right.
fair. But did you
No, I
feel their
agree.
absence?
Um, Again, I hate to say like that I forgot those characters existed, but thinking
Yeah.
more on it, Michael Pena was a big comedic part of the past two movies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I did kind of, I missed him the more that I thought about it. Obviously, David Dashmalchian was still in the movie as I think he's the pink guy, right?
Yeah, he's Veb.
Yeah, which they turned him into Kirby, by the way. As soon as that happened, I was like, oh, that they turned him into Kirby when he gets the hole poked through him and then he's like sucking everybody in.
Oh yeah. That was
Yeah.
That was a crazy moment in the movie.
Um, but yeah, I guess a little bit, but at the same time, I don't know. They tried to supplement them with the other people, with the other kind of
Yeah,
characters in the
with like
quantum realm
the
that
yeah.
I don't think were as funny. Maybe the pink guy, I thought he was fine as a
Yeah,
character.
and then the kind of like
Um,
Xena warrior princess type. I don't
right,
know. It didn't
yeah,
really do it for me, but
right.
I actually saw a lot of people online saying that they really liked that character.
Mm.
But
I for some reason felt when the heat lamp guy died.
yeah.
I was sad when he died. Don't
Oh,
know why.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I was just like, damn. But also, I did see something that was like, if you're trying to set up the next phase of your cinematic universe, maybe kill someone more important than the flashlight head guy. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I get that, but also it's like I think they really went more for that, like just leaving you of like the false sense of security than like, oh, it's Ant-Man 3, it's the first movie of Phase 5 and 3 of them died. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I think that's a big thing. But like we said, guys, did you miss Luis? Did you miss everybody else in there? Let us know that in the comments down below. Again, my name is Sean Monk. I have been one of your hosts. Thank you so much for joining us on this long Ant-Man spoiler discussion and review. Let us know your comments down below on what you thought of every aspect of the movie. Are you looking forward to Loki Season 2? Where do you want to see Ant-Man next? What do we think is going to happen with Ant-Man next? And yeah, that will do it for me. TJ, do you want to tell the lovely people where they can follow us elsewhere?
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at PFN Platform Network, I believe it is.
Yeah.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram. Um, Leave a comment below what you thought of the movie. Check out some of the other reviews on the channel. Check out all our TikToks as well. I put up my non-spoiler review on there, and we will see you next time.